Inini ndakakura naamai vanga vari strict. Ukati musuno yatete woita manyemwe.
Now is Chris Mutsvangwa panicking right here? It seems like he is panicking. Now the question is, why is he panicking following Nelson Chamisa's interview with Newsroom in South Africa? A lot of things are going to be reviewed here subconsciously by Chris Mutsvangwa as he is making a response to Nelson Chamisa's interview, although he might not necessarily coin it that way. This would come after a lot of attention went to Nelson Chamisa following his interview that came following utterances by South African Economic Freedom Fighters leader Julius Malema.
The youth of Zimbabwe must stand up. There is no Malema who's going to come from here and go and liberate Harare. Harare has to stand up for Malema to go there and say, I'm now putting my body on the picket lines in support of the people of Zimbabwe.
Here Malema says the youth must stand up. It was more of a political message than a directed call to action. Anyways, how does Nelson Chamisa address this? He begins by speaking on the disputed election.
We did not agree in the manner and way the elections were conducted. And there's been that dispute. That dispute is before SADC, that dispute is before the African Union, and that dispute is clearly articulated by all international observer mission reports that they came to the conclusion that the election in Zimbabwe was indeed illegal, irregular, and illegitimate, produced an illegitimate outcome. So that's where we are. And what Comrade Malem is saying is an indication of the desperate circumstances that people of Zimbabwe find themselves in. Almost 5 million Zimbabweans are in the diaspora. The reason being that the situation back at home is untenable. The quality conditions, the high taxes for the people, the cost of living is very high, prices are skyrocketing, people can't afford basic commodities, and the life is just out of reach for men.
And then he calls for help.
How do they do so? They do so by not expressing solidarity with dictatorship. They do so by helping Zimbabweans have proper processes, proper elections, and of course to resolve their politics. Right now, we have over 100 political activists who are incarcerated, political prisoners. There's no solidarity. There's no support from the countries that are supporters. That solidarity will go a long way, particularly from the South African government, and also calling out what is not proper and making sure that they characterize evil for what it is.
Particularly from the South African government, calling out what is not proper.
They cannot continue bearing their head in the sand. We need to be able to articulate the issues as they are. It's a dictatorship and it must
articulate the issues as they are. Earlier on yesterday, we saw the ANC seemingly making a U-turn on ZANU PF through their Minister of Health.
On the issue of neighboring countries, my brother, this is a tough issue. How do I answer it? Yeah, but it affects health, I think, very much. Let me give you this example of what we're complaining about, because I remember even Makura, when he was a premier, spoke about this issue. When I arrived in health in 2009, the very same year, I went to a SADC meeting in Swatini. When I arrived there, the minister came to me. He said, my brother, this is too much. There was a Swati national who came to one of our private hospitals. He needed a laparotomy. A laparotomy is when they open the abdomen because there's something or they want to check something there. They charged him 500,000 rand. That's 2009. 500,000. After doing that laparotomy, the Swazi government paid. They've got a medical aid that paid. He went to the
Before wading into Zimbabwe, he begins by mentioning the Swazi government.
world, got infected, and they say we need to open again. Right to Swaziland, they want another 250,000. You're going to do 750,000 rand for a laboratory. And they say, look, man, the Swazis have got a medical aid, not like ours. Because they are a tiny country. When one of their hospitals cannot treat you, they send you into South Africa via that medical aid. The medical aid pays for you. That means only the people they can't treat, because they can't just send everybody. Then they said, no, this medical aid is going to collapse. I said, why are you going to private hospitals? You don't have to. We've got academic hospitals there that can give you good care. So we made them sign a memorandum of understanding with Charlotte Matlek and Steve Biko. Even now, that process is still working. And they are a tiny country. Other neighbors don't do that. They just close their eyes.
Other neighbors don't do that. They just close their eyes.
And let people cross the border and say,
And let people cross the border.
see to finish. Yeah, if you don't have food and money, for goodness sake, your neighbor has got. Why don't you speak to your neighbor? Neighbor, we're hungry. Are you able to help? You don't just tell your kids, no.
He would go on even deeper and deeper and deeper with that. Nelson Chamisa is then asked to comment on Zimbabweans coming back home to fix the issues back home. And this is his response.
Because we are seeking other better and greener pastures, better opportunities. To invite people back into hell, or to invite people back into this very difficult situation, I think would be disingenuous. We have to correct the settings. Yes, Zimbabweans have a role to play in elections, but the elections are actually not proper elections. So even if Zimbabweans were to come, look at what happened in the past election. People were in the queues. The ballot papers were not there. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission could not produce 5 ballot papers. And it actually turned out that Mr. Mnangagwa's friend, Witness Chivayo, a business person who was actually printing the ballot papers, is the one who was playing the sabotage. The election was just a sham. So to talk of election...
Here he refers to Chivayo as Mr. Mnangagwa's friend.
And Zimbabweans coming to those of elections.
Now, how would Chris Mutsvangwa respond now?
Akakura naamai vanga vari strict. Ukati musuno yatete woita manyemwe, wotaura zvemanga-manga uchitaura kuti atete vangu varipo. Amai vangu vanokuratidza kuti muyena haupinimidze pambi.
He begins to talk about what happens at home. He forgets that he is speaking on a political platform.
All this time, the CCC was quiet because they are disorganized. Now we have a major a diplomatic event, which we have worked hard towards, which everything possible to look as spruced as ever, to look good. Amai vakugezesa kuti muonekwe zvakanaka naatete. Iwo wakusvika ipapa wakuti vanonditi, vanonditi pamberi paatete. Amai vangu vanokutorera shamhu pamberi paatete ipapa vokushapura. Vabva futi atete vokurova futi kuti hazviitwi. This is mischief on the part of Chamisa. It has nothing.
This is mischief on the part of Chamisa. What did he talk about? All the issues that he talked about. He talked about the disputed election, Zimbabwean coming back to hell, finding each other, talked about dialogue, asked for help from other African nations. He talked on SADC's effort and commented on it as a positive. Then he commented on term extension and dealing with tyranny. Of these issues mentioned above, the most popular would be the disputed election.
To do with showing Democrats, because if he wanted to be democratic, he should have won the elections. If he wanted to be democratic, he would have sorted the mess in his party through democratic means. He didn't sort that out. How do you want to be democratic by demonstrating SADC when you are not democratic?
Here, Mutsvangwa looks very emotional and sounds very emotional. Then he talks on demonstrating on the SADC day. Chamisa does not mention demonstrating anywhere. But anyways, for his speech to make sense, he has to mention something to do with demonstration.
By running the affairs of your party on a day-to-day basis. It's mischief, and we are a party which fought a war. We know the pain of organization.
We are a party which fought a war. We know the pain.
We know the sacrifice of discipline in order to achieve certain ends. Don't try to taunt ZANU PF. Because
and then he goes, don't try to taunt ZANU PF. We know the sacrifices. Personally, I have heard of them. Legends like Josiah Tungugara.
We've gone through worse things than before. And there is nothing for ZANU PF which is worse than a war. So we don't want to be taunted as a party. Kuda kufadza vayeni musi wavanouya. We will not allow it.
And then he says, kuda kufadza vayeni musi wavanouya. Anyways, everything that Chamisa talked about was concerning Zimbabwe and Zimbabweans, and issues that are real, according to him, Nelson Chamisa, the issues that are dear to him, like the election. And then he talks on finding each other. Here, basically, Chris Mutsvangwa is saying, keep quiet. We went to war.
Well, look, I must say that I've been shouting my voice hoarse as a leader of the alternative, to say we have to find each other as a people. There has to be political dialogue. There has to be political settlement in Zimbabwe. There has to be an understanding on fundamentals around electoral reforms and political reforms and constitutional reforms. And these reforms must actually be a product of Zimbabweans coming together to look at what should be dealt with in terms of the deficits we're seeing. It's common cause that we have problems with elections, we have problems with governance. It's common cause that it is politics stupid, it is governance stupid, it is leadership stupid. We are where we are because of the crisis of governance. And we have said we have to come together. The problem has been ZANU PF. They are not willing to look at the problems affecting their country. They want to look at exogenous factors and foreigners around the issue. The biggest challenge we have in this country is the breakdown of good governance and the lack of rule of law. That is what we must address. Disputed elections and disputed national process.
Here, Chamisa talks of finding each other as one of the main resolutions, not necessarily involving externals. However, he is speaking in an interview. He is the one that is called. And as a politician, what does he do? He responds as a man of the people. He responds. Now, Chris Mutsvangwa comes with rhetoric of having gone to the war.
Mr. Mnangagwa must understand that he has outstayed and overstayed his welcome. This previous election, he didn't win. You can't come through the back door. Once you come through the back door, you want to extend the house that you have actually criminally occupied. That cannot be allowed, and we will not allow it. There has to be a proper election. There has to be a proper government. There has to be an understanding of the reforms that are supposed to be instituted and a transitional mechanism so that Zimbabwe is restored back to normality and democracy and majority rule. That is what we're working on. This whole thing of extending his rule is a big issue for the people of Zimbabwe, and Zimbabweans.
Here, Chamisa is opposing the extension, the term extension. Big up to Brighton Nyambayo watching us live. Says Ziriseiko, Vanu Kuchkamanje, Mutsvangwa. Yes, with the tone he is speaking, he begins his intro. I grew up with a strict mother. As a young child, of course, not as an adult, because the government is not a parent or a guardian.
Ukati musuno ya tete woita manyemu wotaura zvemanga manga uchitaura kuti atete vangu varipo.
So the reference that he is making here does not apply to governance. It doesn't apply to governance, the institution of government, what it is all about. It is not about that. Maybe if it is some other system, some other political system, it cannot be communism. It's some other system. I don't know what it is. So that would be good for their political party internal politics, not to tell the nation. Anyways, he was wearing ZANU PF regalia, but anyways, he is addressing again the citizens leader, the leader of the citizens, Nelson Chamisa.
As a party which fought a war, we know the pain of organization. We know the sacrifice of discipline in order to achieve certain ends. Don't try to taunt ZANU PF. A party which fought a war, we know the pain of organization. We know the sacrifice of discipline in order to achieve certain ends. Don't try to taunt ZANU PF, because we've gone through worse things than before. And there is nothing for ZANU PF which is worse than a war. So we don't want to be taunted as a party. We will not have.
That is Chris Mutsvangwa there. Anyways, the question remains, why the panic? It may be because Nelson Chamisa's interview got a lot of attention. Or maybe it brought to light issues that were thought to have been forgotten. What is your opinion on this? Write your answer in the comment section below. Dr. Clarence is the name, TVCN Live is the channel. As always, thank you for watching. And I'm on out.